Well, so much has happened in the life of my family since you and I last sat on the porch. So today we are going to catch up, okay? We're going to catch up on what's been going on in my family, and I'll share with you what's been happening in the life of my father and my mom. And then also we need to catch up on a series that we started a few weeks ago. Now we want to continue it starting today, and that series is called Stronger. 7 struggles that will make you stronger. 7 struggles that God uses to make you and me stronger women of God. And the interesting thing about today is what I'm going to tell you about what my father's been through, what my mother's been through, really does beautifully tie in with one of these struggles that God allows many, many times in our lives. Well, first of all, let me just tell you about my dad. Lots of you have been praying for him, and I'm so grateful. About 6 weeks ago, he was admitted to the hospital, and he had been having some symptoms, some headaches, and some other problems. And my mother took him to a hospital in Fort Worth where they did some tests, and they found a blood clot on his brain. Turned out to be an enormous blood clot, and they decided they needed to go in and do surgery the very next day. I drove up, my other brothers came in town, and I stayed there at the hospital back and forth with my mom at her house for 2 weeks while my dad was in ICU recovering from brain surgery. It was a success. They were able to remove that clot and didn't have any problems with that, for which we were very grateful. However, there are lots of repercussions from brain surgery that most people experience, and my dad experienced those. He was and continues to have problems with his speech, okay? When they go into your brain, they operate, it messes things up a little bit, and so he's having to relearn how to talk again. He woke up and his arms were kind of strong, but his fingers, he didn't have the use of his fingers, and so now he's having to relearn how to do all those daily things, shave and brush your teeth and feed yourself and all that. He began physical therapy, and I want to tell you something. It's just been remarkable, the sweet spirit that he's had and the strength that I've watched my daddy have, even at his weakness. It's been a supernatural thing. Today, my dad, after 6 weeks, 2 weeks in ICU and 4 weeks in a skilled nursing facility where he's been receiving physical and occupational and speech therapy, today, my dad goes home. And I'm so grateful. And he's going home stronger. But I want to tell you something. He's not back to his normal old self yet. But this is what I want to tell you the beautiful thing is. In so many ways, he's stronger than he ever was before he had that surgery. His strength in the Lord, his faith in the Lord. It's just an amazing supernatural thing, the way I've seen God use this to strengthen him, who was already a strong man in the Lord, a wonderful Christian, great father. But I have watched sickness and suffering bring out a strength in my father. That is just the most supernatural thing I've witnessed in a long, long time. And girls, that's how God wants to use our struggles. And so today, as we pick up where we left off in this Front Porch Friday series, Stronger, I want to talk to you about the very first of these 7 struggles. And struggle number 1 is this. Well, it's sickness and it's suffering, okay? It may be illness, it may be cancer, it may be just getting old, whatever it is, but you just are not as strong as you were before. It's sickness. It's also suffering. It may be that someone you know is sick, or someone you know is near death, or perhaps even you've experienced the loss of a loved one. That is suffering. And sickness and suffering are one of the primary ways that God wants to use in our lives to make us stronger women of God. I think about Paul the apostle in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He speaks of a time in his life when he was able to ascend to the 3rd heaven. He said, I don't know whether I was in my body or out of my body. He said, but God called him up and he was into paradise. And it says there that he heard things and saw things that were inexpressible. He said, I can't even express them. And it says that there in that passage that he was prohibited. He was not allowed to share everything he heard and saw with those of us, as he wrote that letter there to the people of Corinth. But he did say this. He said, that experience is worth boasting about, he said. But I'm not going to do it. He said, I'm not going to boast about this great experience I had being caught up into the 3rd heaven, seeing God and seeing heaven. He said, I will boast only, now listen to this, of my weaknesses. Of my weaknesses. Then he goes on to show us what God allowed to happen to him after this incredible experience that he experienced. He says, even though I received such wonderful revelations from God to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in the flesh, okay? It was some kind of illness or sickness that plagued Paul for the rest of his life. He says it was given to me to keep me from becoming proud. It was a messenger from Satan to torment me and to keep me from becoming proud. You see, Paul knew why he had received this illness, this sickness, this thorn in the flesh. He said, God gave it to me to keep me from becoming so proud of all that I had experienced and seen there in paradise with God. But he said it didn't matter, because he says in verse 8, 3 times I begged God, please take this away. Take this away. But each time, listen what God said. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Girls, that's why he allows us to suffer. That's why he allows sickness to come into our lives. So he can pour out his grace and show us that it's all we need, and so that his power can be displayed, because it works best when we're at our weakest. And I saw that in my dad's life. Paul went on to say this, so now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that that power that makes us strong, the power of Christ works through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in insults and hardships and persecutions and troubles. He's talking about those things. He says that I suffered. Okay, so he's talking about sickness and suffering here. And then he closes out this passage this way in verse 10. Because when I am weak, then I am strong. If my daddy were here with me right now, he would tell you the same thing. As he's been weak and he's getting stronger by the day physically, but spiritually, even after he woke up from that brain surgery, the strength of God was all over him. We saw it. His friends and his family saw it. The nurses and the doctors saw it. It was just an amazing thing as he's at that rehab facility working with those physical therapists and the nurses that have taken such excellent care of him. Listen, the strength of the Lord has been upon him even in his weakness, and we have witnessed that. It has been an amazing light that my dad has been able to be through his weakness. Girls, listen, here's what you need to know when you're in sorrow, when you're suffering, and when you're sick, when you're going through these kinds of struggles. You need to know this. God has a purpose for it, okay? Now, Paul said he knew what it was for. It was to keep him from boasting. But most of the time, when we're sick, when we're suffering, we don't know why. And that's hard, isn't it? But you have to know that God has a purpose for it. But here's what you can know, okay? Here's what you can know. You can know this, that God wants to use your suffering and your sickness, not only because he wants to show you his grace and that his grace is all you need, but also, even when you don't have answers, you can know this. His power works better in your weakness and in my weakness. And I've seen that in my dad's life. I can testify to that. I've watched it. I've witnessed it firsthand. When my daddy was weak, I saw the strength, and I continue to see the strength of the Lord upon him. Girls, God wants to use our struggles to make us stronger. Even sickness, even sorrow, even suffering. He wants to show you and me that his grace is all we need, so that we can say like Paul said, when I'm weak, I'm strong. Are you suffering? Are you sick? Is someone you know in that situation? I would love to pray for you. Post a comment and let me know, and I'll pray for you, and all of us Glow Girls here will pray for you and your loved one if you need our prayers. Listen, I felt your prayers. Many of you are praying for me and my dad, and I felt them, and I watched God answer them, and I want to thank you for that. Some of you, though, have been through sickness and suffering, and you've experienced the grace of God, that strength, that power that he gives us, that when we're weak, he is strong. I'd love to hear your testimonies. So post a comment there on the blog. Girls, listen, God wants to make us stronger, even through our sickness, even through suffering. Next week, we're going to talk about the second way, the second struggle that God uses to make us stronger. But I'm so glad to be back on the porch with you today. Thanks so much for sitting here with me, and I will see you next week right here again on Front Porch Friday. I love y'all. Bye-bye.